James Franco told me that you wanted to learn how to mix Suno stems inside of an actual DAW from a producer who's been doing it for 10 years. This video is actually a clip from a free full course that I did on Suno. You can find that in the link in the description. So here's all our stems. I'm just going to select all of these and bring it into FL. Now the tips I'm about to teach you will work in any DAW if you don't have FL Studio. First of all, I'm going to change the tempo to 95 BPM and hopefully everything is on beat. Holy shit, it's on beat. That's gonna make our job so much easier because now we can replace drums and do all types of cool stuff. So I'm gonna go to the vocals and I'm just gonna bring these way down here and I'm just gonna mute these for now so that we're just working on the instrumental first. So we have that brief moment of silence in the intro. So I'm just gonna select all of these tracks, shorten it so it starts with that synth. Very first thing I noticed is there's some hissy nonsense going on in the beginning. So we just got to figure out where that's coming from. I think it's this. Nope, it's coming from right here. Now, since the rest of this synth probably doesn't have that issue as much, I'm going to make this unique a sample and EQ this separately from how I do the rest of the synth. And here at the high end is where all of that stuff is. See, it's all up in here. Now this part seems a little bit muddy. So I'm just going to take out some of this 100 Hertz range. And I can still hear a bit, so I'm going to cut this off a little bit more. And then whenever it comes up right here, I want that high energy to come back. So I'm going to automate the cutoff for this EQ and this EQ. And if you're watching this and you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? I told you it was going to get nerdy. I warned you. Just from here to here, I want that high energy to come back. So I'm just going to do something like this. I'm going to click right here and go to Articulator Tools, copy state, and then paste state. That way both EQs do the same exact thing. That sounds good, but it still doesn't sound very smooth. So I'm going to put a reverb on here that's completely wet. That sounds like this. It's just completely washed out. I'm going to give it a long decay and I'm going to automate the mix of it. So that way it starts out with none of the reverb and then whenever it goes into the verse, it completely washes out. And then it's going to go right back to no mix. So that way it just goes completely dry. And just for funsies, since I said we're going full nerd, let's go full nerd. I'm also going to use the Panomatic, which is basically just an LFO inside of FL Studio that allows you to control panning or volume. And I'm going to control volume. So I'm going to have the mix of that effect down all the way and kind of slant up just like the rest of the EQs and everything. And I'm going to turn the amount up and I'm going to make an automation clip for the speed. So that way it starts kind of slow and then goes fast. So it'll kind of give you like a, brings the energy up is the only way I know how to describe it. And it also kind of sounds like it's going around your head. Now, since we did lose some of that high end, I'm going to make a copy of this synth at a higher octave. I'm going to make unique as sample, bring it into another mixer track, and I'm just going to take out all of the low end because the first pad or the first synth is using all of that. And then I'm just going to do a completely reverbed out high end so it can kind of mask those ugly frequencies. See, without it and with it. Now let's route both of these to one track together. Even with all that reverb, there's still some grossness in there. Like there's still some AI artifacts. So I'm going to use Soothe, which is basically a de-esser on crack. And a de-esser just removes like hissy frequencies. It can't completely remove all the hissy stuff that AI does, but it can make it sound better. So now I have exported both of those together as one layer. Now we have one file that just sounds like this. And now let's work on this intro synth. So the first thing I noticed is that clunky, very clunky in the low end. And EQ is really not going to save that, so we can just take that first note out, really. And we could even chop this note and like replace it. That might work. Yeah, I think that'll work. Sounds a little choppy right now, but once we add some reverb, it'll really help. So let's get us a big ol' reverb once again. I think I'm gonna add a bit crusher to that synth because I think that'll sound nice. We could even add an extra delay because the original audio file from Suno already has some delay in it. Adding some more delay on top of that could make it sound really cool. So I'm going to export that so we have the audio file with all the effects on it. And then let's try doing a higher octave of this also. But I don't want you to really be able to hear it. I want it to be more like a background thing. So we'll even take off the bit crusher and make the reverb completely wet. And I'm going to use one of my favorite plugins ever, Valhalla Shimmer. And it's just a reverb, but it's so good for making things sound ambient. So yes, let's save that as an audio file as well. And before we start EQing everything and making everything sound pristine, I really want to get this intro right. I work really long on my intros to make sure that they sound good because it's like the first thing the listener's going to hear. That's like when they're deciding if they want to continue to listen. So I always try to make them sound good. And one of my favorite things is to get something from the vocals from the chorus because that like gives you a teaser of what the song is. Too close. So either that vocal chop or the phrase too close would be really good for the intro. So I'm just going to get some compression on that vocal. I'm going to use gain reduction because they have a cool lo-fi button. Too close. And I just like the way that sounds. And the S's are crazy with this one, so we're definitely bringing out our old friend Soothe once more. Too close. Too close. And also before the compressor, we need some EQ, getting rid of that low frequencies and the mids, a little bit of the mids. Alright, gain reduction might be too aggressive. So instead, I'm going to use Neutron 2 by Isotope. And we're also going to do some like reverb and delay on that. And let's switch it up a bit. Let's use Vintage Verb. So we're going to export that with that reverb on it. And I might try one pitched up all the way too. I think it could help having the vocal chop like tucked even further in the background that's like at the drop. And maybe we'll repeat this so she says too close twice.
Ink on my fingers.
So the very last thing we need to do to make this intro polished and sounding really good is add some type of texture, some type of background ambience. My favorite thing to use, especially for music like this, is either birds or ocean waves. And I also have a bunch of different recordings of just random stuff, but this feels like it needs birds to me. And I just have a bunch of fucking samples of birds. But this one, I've used that on so many of my clients' songs. Okay, it sounds so subtle, but like it breathes life into the production. Like hear it without it. And then with it. It just immediately gives you like a euphoric feeling. I'm gonna turn it down a little bit because I don't want it to be like birds all up in your face. I usually will have something like that going out through the entire track. Sometimes I'll take it out for certain sections or change it to be a different ambience if I'm going for like a different emotion at a different part of the track. But a lot of the time it's just repeated throughout the whole thing. And I lied, that's not the last thing we're going to do for this intro. We're also going to make a reverse reverb swell for this vocal, because that's the first thing that's heard. And the way you do that is by reversing the sample and then putting it into a big reverb and then reversing it again. So let's just take this, put it into a mixer track, throw some big reverb on there. Now we can export that with all the reverb on it. So now we have this. And when we reverse it, we have this. If we time it just right to go along with the vocal that comes in, it gives it a very smooth transition. And you can do the same thing with synths too. But sometimes I just like to have the synth completely dry and reversed into it. And the whole point of all of that is just to make the transition from intro to verse as smooth as possible.
Ink on my fingers.
I lied again. There's actually one more thing we need. We need some type of noise sweep or reverse that really helps with the transition as well. This is from one of my packs called Modern Post Arsenal. Mainly, I use this for all of this stuff that I'm doing right now, like the post-production stuff, having effects in the background and all of that little stuff. And these are what are called downlifters. And they work really good as like sweeps or reverses whenever you reverse these. So I'm just going to use that one and reverse it. So now that we have the intro done, let's get to mixing the rest of this, which is actually going to be a lot easier than what we just did. I'm going to start with this synth since it's like the first thing that comes up. So the first thing I'm noticing is why can't a motherfucker talk? So the first thing that I'm noticing is this sounds just a little bit too dry. So I'm gonna put a short reverb on there. And I can also hear a little bit of mud in this area, so I'm gonna take some of that out. Then let's get these drums that also have a pad in them. I'm just going to take out a little bit of the high end. So that way we can't hear the snaps as much. And I'm also going to take out all the bass because the synth is taking up the bass. I'm also going to throw a stereo enhancer on there just to make it a little bit more wide, and then we can add a clap or our on snap to go into the middle to be like the main drum that's heard. Now let's make a new pattern and get just like a tiny clap. I really like these small room reverb claps. It's a little too low pitch, so I'm just going to raise up the pitch of it. And without it, see, the clap adds a lot of energy that snap wasn't bringing. Another cool thing you can do, it's a bit of a tangent, but for the people who really want to get into production, I think you'll appreciate this. I'm going to duplicate the sample and then reverse it sometimes. So I'm just going to do it on every second clap. When you do it on every clap, it gets a little redundant. Definitely got to turn that down though. I just had it loud so that you could hear what's going on. And I also want to add some hi-hats. Hi-hats are really good at like subtly picking up the energy. I'm just going to do a rhythm that kind of accents the clap. Okay, so now we're transitioning into the build, and a lot of times with builds you'll have impacts and you'll have downlifters, and then risers and noise sweeps going into the drop. Suno did make this impact, but I don't like it. So I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to put my own impact. This is from one of my sample packs called Lincoln Pork. I don't have this on the YouTube shop anymore. It might be on my Patreon. I'm not sure. And let's also get a downlifter. It sounds so good, but that's way too loud. So let's bring that volume down a lot. Now let's make this sound a little less AI. That hissiness lives around this region, like 2K and up. Okay, looks like it's actually around 6K. Since we are going into a build up, I want this to get wider as well, so I'm going to put another reverb after the short reverb, but it's going to be a long one. And then we're going to do exactly what we did in the intro. I think I've cracked the system, at least for ambient stuff, on how to get rid of the noise. You take it out in the original, and then you make a duplicate of it at a higher octave, and you put a fuck ton of reverb on it. And problem solved. Pitch it up so that it sounds like this, which already sounds pretty as fuck. Now I'm gonna do something a little bit crazy. I'm gonna put Camel Crusher after the reverb. This is basically like a really heavy compressor plus saturation. So it's really gonna squash the sound into the reverb, but that gives you like a really big sound, especially if you squash it a lot and then you tuck it in the background. Now we need to get this bass for the build a lot more controlled, because as you can see, the volume is kind of everywhere, and for bass we really want that to be stable. So the first thing I'm gonna do is put Camel Crusher on there again. The British Clean preset, I don't know what it does, but it's amazing. And honestly, for this, I would rather just replace the bass completely. And this type of bass is really simple to make. Like, it's really just a sub bass, which is usually just a sine wave. I'm gonna draw this out at a higher octave because it's just easier to figure out the notes. Let's mute this bass and work on this one a little bit to get it sounding similar to the Suno one. That's alright. It's a little boring though. I'm going to turn on the legato and mono so it slides from note to note. And I'm going to increase the attack a little bit so we don't really have a click. I'm also going to add a saw wave on top of this sub and just like detune it a little bit. I think that'll sound nice. Yeah, I like that shit. But we got to put a low pass filter on it to get rid of that high end buzzing from the saw wave. Yeah, we could even add a little bit of randomness to that low pass filter. So this is a sample and hold LFO, and that's controlling the cutoff of the low pass filter. So basically all that's doing is randomizing the cutoff of the low pass filter. So that sounds like this. And that's just going to give it a little extra life. But I'm still going to tame down some of these highs just in case they poke out sometimes. And if I was really going hard on this, I would probably add like 3 or 4 layers of bass and EQ them differently and just kind of fill out the frequency range a little bit more. But this is probably already too much what I've done already. So, but let me know down in the comments if you do want me to do all that, because I'll go crazy on this shit. I really will. Now, I kind of want to add this vocal chop from the intro, this one. at the second half of the build because that's just gonna tease it a little bit more.
I'm scared it won't last. Keep my hands in my pockets.
And I want to add some type of melody to make it really easy. Actually, we can just take the build bass MIDI and we can copy it in here, and then we can turn this into chords. We can just turn this into an arpeggio. In FL Studio, you just hit the gear icon and then go to the wrench, and then you can either do a randomized arpeggio or down. I'm just gonna go down. So if we just assign this LFO to the cutoff, we can make like a little filter or a pluck sound. I'm also going to assign a macro to the cutoff and automate that so that way the cutoff filter opens up over time and it just sounds nice. I'll show you what that sounds like. It's like opening up and it just really builds nice. Let's also do Camel Crusher on British Clean because that always sounds good. And we'll take some of the high end out, some of the low end out, and we're gonna push this towards the background because I don't want it to be the main thing you hear. We can throw some delays on there, like a ping pong delay. And another reverb. Alright, and we're almost done. I'm just gonna get this drop mixed and then do a little bit of mastering. You know, you learn the concepts from all of this. We don't need to do the whole song. So first, let's get this bass a little more in your face. Cool, I've already got British Clean on there. I'm gonna bump up the sub a little bit. Okay, so I'm just gonna export that with Camel Crusher on it so that I can add an extra wideness layer of bass. And then with the duplicated bass, we're gonna distort it and then widen it. So I'm just gonna use kilohertz distortion. And then afterwards, we're gonna high pass it to get rid of all the low end because we're just trying to get some extra bass crunch, make it fill up the frequency spectrum a little bit. And then I'm gonna use our handy dandy stereo enhancer, make it wide. Maybe we can take out some of the mids, but basically this is just gonna make the bass be heard on smaller speakers because they usually have a frequency cutoff where you can't really hear the sub unless you have subwoofers or something. So if you're listening on your phone or something like that, this will really make the bass be heard more and it'll make it sound bigger. All right, and let's get these drums. Okay, those drums just sound too not good. I'm just going to take out all the low end of it and just recreate these drums. I'm gonna throw the British Clean preset on there again because it just really makes stuff stand out. And I'm gonna take out like all of the low end so all you can hear is this. I'm just gonna use one of my favorite kicks. And then let's get a future bassy snare. All right, let's send our kick and snare to their own mixers, and then I'm gonna route them to the same track. So one thing I do in all of my tracks is I do a transient shaper on the kick and the snare that really brings out the transient, and then I put a soft clipper on the kick and snare bus. Bass and drums are sounding good. Let's get this first synth. Just throw Camel Crusher on it. I'm telling you, British Clean, Camel Crusher is the GOAT. That already sounds good. Let's just high pass it, get rid of the bass on the chords. Let's get a small room reverb again. Now let's bring in this synth, which sounds like this. Kind of want to try making this a higher octave. Yeah, that's nice. Let's put Kilohertz Ensemble on that. Give it some detune. Yeah, and then do some British clean on that one as well. Definitely got to high pass that. And I really want to have that large room reverb sound, but I don't want it to ring out whenever the chords stop. So I'm just going to automate the mix of this reverb to cut out every time that the synth does. And then we got these two synths. So for this lead, I'm going to do both of them on separate mixer tracks, and I'm going to use the stereo enhancer again. I'm gonna go to the right and then wide, and then I'm gonna copy this exact stereo enhancer but then go to the left, so that way it's delaying the signal in two opposite directions and it kind of fills out the whole stereo field. And then let's route that to one track together, and then we can use the Camel Crusher once again just to kind of crush them together. We can definitely get rid of the low end on this too, because we don't want anything to clash with the bass. So let's see how that all sounds without the vocal chop. Now let's get this vocal chop, and then after that we're gonna mix the actual vocals, then we can move on to mastering. I'm gonna make the vocal chop unique as sample. Let's throw some OTT on it. Maybe a little bit of reverb. I wonder how this would sound with a low layer like this. Last but not least, let's get these vocals done. And I've actually already got a vocal preset for one of my clients, so this lady's voice is similar and I think it would work really well. Yeah, it sounds good. And I'll just show you a little bit of what's going on in this vocal preset. First, we've got a high cut around here. It's pretty high, but usually for female vocals, this is like a good starting point around 120. And then I've got Neutron, which is just doing some EQ cleanup and a high shelf on the highs and a little bit of multi-band compression. Ink on my fingers. And then another EQ to bring out the highs a little bit more. And then we've got Soothe, which is just doing a little bit of de-essing. Ink on my fingers, fading blue, backseat heat. Then I've got it running into a compressor. Ink on my fingers. Where that compressor is just kind of kissing the vocal and just like barely giving it that little touch. But then my secret sauce is I slam that shit into a limiter. I don't care what anybody says. That shit sounds good. Ink on my fingers, fading blue, backseat heat. And I'm realizing we can turn up the synth volume a little bit. Ink on my fingers, fading blue, backseat heat. And now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to make some effects buses. So we're going to route to this track, not route to this track only. So that way the signal is coming from the original and it's also coming out of here. And I'm going to do a simple ping pong delay, turn the dry down and have the wet up. And then I like to use the annihilator or annihilate preset from Camel Crusher. That just like gives it a nice distorted, saturated sound. But we're going to EQ after the distortion, so you really just barely hear that. But it really helps add rhythm to the voice and makes it wider. Ink on my fingers, fading blue, backseat heat, cheap perfume, windows have open. And then let's route to this track as well so we can do a reverb. I'm going to do vintage reverb because I like the way that shit sounds. Ink on my fingers, fading blue, backseat heat, cheap
perfume, windows half open.
And I'm gonna go a little bit extra because I like to be extra. I'm gonna duplicate this vocal and we're gonna do a fake harmony. So I'm gonna put this duplicated vocal in its own mixer track, do the safety limiter and put on stereo enhancer. And I'm going to put an auto tune before all of that. Usually I would go into Melodyne and just draw this out by hand, but that takes a while. So I'm gonna change this to F sharp major so we can do this the easier way. I know that a third harmony would probably sound good with this, like a major third, which would be 4 semitones up from the original tune. So if I turn this up 4 semitones without the auto tune, it wouldn't stay in the same key because it changes all the notes that she's singing. But if we put the auto tune afterwards, that'll make sure all the notes sound tuned.
I still do what I say. We talk too fast. One close down, it's true.
Definitely got to get rid of some of that high end though, because it's starting to get crazy.
I still do what I say. We talk too fast. One close down, it's truth, and I'm scared it won't last.
If I really went through the entire process from front to back, this would be a very long video, so it's already a long video. Let's quit while we're ahead. Now I'm going to show you my mastering process, which a lot of the times is just jamming it into a clipper, but that's like, you really got to have your mixing really good to be able to do that and make it sound good. So we're going to use Ozone because that's the most beginner friendly way to master something. I'm going to put Fruity Balance on the master, which is basically just a utility where I can control volume and panning, and I'm just going to turn the volume down some on the whole thing. I like to get it around like 6, like -6, -3 dB. Because Ozone's just easier to use when there's more headroom. So we're gonna get the loudest part of the song, which is the drop, and then we're gonna use the master assistant. If you have songs that you like that are similar to what you're going for, you can use this reference and it'll try to copy the mastering of another song. Since I don't have one of those, I'm just gonna set streaming as the target, and it's going to listen and give us like a preset to start with. And the first thing I usually like to look at is the EQ, because that can give me hints into what might be wrong with the mix. Like you can see it did a big bump in the low mids, which means I probably need to make the low mids in my bass a little bit higher. And then we can bring this down on the master. So I'm gonna bring this threshold down on the maximizer, which is basically just gonna squash the shit out of this thing and make it nice loud. That's already sounding great, but I'm going to add this imager and make the high band really, really, really wide, because you want to think of your stereo field kind of like a comb, kind of like you can see right here, where the lower frequencies are more mono, and as you go higher in pitch or frequency, they get wider. And this is especially important with Suno stems, because I've noticed a lot of the times they are like completely fucking mono. So I'm going to do it all the way on the highest band, maybe do like a little bit like that on this one. And I'll usually not even touch the sub, because I'm usually really particular how I do that in the mix already. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Alright, now I'm going to export this as just one track so we can A/B the original Suno generation, so you can hear the massive difference this made. So now I've got both the waveforms in. Let's change the color of this so you can see it easier. So this is the Chill Panic-ified version, and this is the Suno version. And if you're bored and want to skip past this part and don't want to hear this whole thing, then fine, do that. I don't care. I'm just going to keep going back and forth between the Chill Panic-ified and the Suno version.
With ink on my fingers, fading blue. Backseat heat, tea, perfume. Windows half open. You said don't get attached, like a joke you knew, but you laugh in my chest like a